Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Central Bank Governor Timothy Antoine tells the St. Kitts authorities time to consider raising the retirement age to save Social Security. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Wednesday, 29th March 2023. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Multi-Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. There may be need to increase the retirement age in St. Kitts and Nevis to protect the viability of the Social Security Fund, says Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank Timothy Antoine. In a presentation made recently to the Chamber of Commerce, the governor pointed out that the state of the fund at this time only assures a few more years of its sustenance, and authorities will need to consider increasing the retirement age. Andre Huey of SKN Newsline has more.
That right now, retirement age in St. Kitts and Nevis is 62. In most of the other islands, it's at 65. So yes, folks, we are going to have to retire a little later. Yes. And you could still choose to retire a little earlier if you want. But thank you very much, Marlon. But what it does mean is that they will probably introduce some early retirement factors, which mean if you go a little earlier, you will get a little less of your pension until you get to the new age, whatever that age is set by the state.
The governor noted that ultimately the public will have to fix the future of the pension system.
So I'm not announcing anything. I am not in a position to. I have no authority to do that. But I do want to point out to you. And by the way, if you don't fix Social Security, you, the people will fix it. How are you going to fix it? Either you don't get your pension or the state is going to have to implement taxes to fix it. Because in every single law in our countries, the state has an implicit or explicit guarantee to cover any shortfalls in Social Security. If you're sitting in business, you know that if the state has to do this without help, you are going to get involved. So we need to come together to make sure that certain things happen with Social Security, to preserve it, not just for us, but our children and our grandchildren. So this shows you what I was referring to. Most of our countries are at 65. Grenada, which is at 60, has announced that starting next year is going to 61. It will get to 65 over a 9-10 year period. But most of the other countries are at 65. Antigua is moving to 65 as well. St. Vincent, I believe, is on a track to get there. So obviously, a discussion needs to be had in St. Kitts and Nevis about this pension age.
Increasing the pension age is not only an issue for the Eastern Caribbean. French President Emmanuel Macron forced through his plans to raise pension age in France last week, triggering massive protests across the country. Macron defended his plan to raise the official retirement age in France from 62 to 64. Andre Huey, SKN Newsline.
An apparent show of political maturity at the PNP-NEC meeting earlier on Sunday, where leader of the opposition Mark Golding addressed recent controversy relating to remarks he made and received during the course of the budget debate. CVM Live's Joel Crossgill reports.
Remastering the message, leader of the opposition Mark Golding sought to deflate some of the tension that has resulted from what many perceive to be inappropriate and inflammatory recent comments from the PNP leader himself, as well as those directed towards him.
Comrades, trust me. I know how politics going on. Nigel Clark is my friend, you know. He's my friend. I'm not telling a lie. Nigel Clark is my friend. And him kind of naive to the politics, and him get himself in a little problem because he probably thought he was being clever, but he mashed certain pound that people in Jamaica don't really like, because the truth is that we believe in tolerance and inclusion. Them say out of many one people.
The opposition leader concedes that his phrasing during a recent political meeting in Nannyville, after innuendo that his party had something to do with the technical challenges experienced during Prime Minister Andrew Holness's budget presentation, was also inappropriate.
I said something where we shouldn't say it that way. Because I was just saying to myself, imagine when the people on public sector workers go on strike, they must have PNP put them up to it. Like them don't respect the public sector workers and the struggle that they are in. So anybody who, when I call, use a little damn fool talk, if I hurt anybody's feelings or anything, I'm sorry, never mean that. I was just pointing out how totally ridiculous it was.
Golding also commented on misinformation circulating on social media about his familial connections to historic slave ownership.
And this argument about my family tree, you see them upload some family tree on the internet, some bogus document saying my people are slave owners. Not go so. Not go so.
Joel Crosskill, CVM Live.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
The Bahamas Nurses Association is on a drive to retain nurses. More in this ZNS News item.
Retaining nurses in the country, the focus of recently elected president of the Bahamas Nurses Union, Muriel Lightbourne, who admits government has offered a retention plan, but it still needs to be reworked.
One nurse leave, that's a lot. And so our thing is, what we want to do is find a way to work with the government to make some provisions to keep our nurses. We have, in the last industrial agreement, we have gotten a retention plan, but a lot of our nurses are not pleased with that. And so we want to revisit that retention plan to make it more profitable for our nurses. We talk about, a lot of times people think it's about the monies, which it is not. Nurses need to have a clear career plan for them. You have nurses who've been working with 20, 25 years and still not gotten one promotion. And so we need to make that more fair.
Now, Lightbourne was speaking on the sidelines of the National Tripartite Annual General Assembly. However, she said for nurses who work on what's considered hardship family islands, they also have concerns as it relates to a lack of banking facilities, among other things.
And so we find our nurses have to travel to Nassau to collect their salaries. And so if I'm making $1,000 a month, and the nurse down in Ragged Island is making $1,000 a month, and she has to pay $300 to come to New Providence to collect her salary, that poses a problem, because she's already working in deficit. So these are the things we want to look at.
Jamaica's police commissioner tells justices of the peace close monitoring of communities needed to reduce conflicts. Shamela Pullin of TVJ News reports.
According to Major General Anthony Anderson, at least 17% of the murders committed in the island are due to interpersonal issues. He was speaking at the quarterly meeting for Justices of the Peace in St. Andrew on Saturday.
Domestic and over the fence, over $100, over a set of bottles, over a pair of shoes, that sort of thing. Over quarrels, over vote, going on somebody else's land and eating something. This is real. These are things that are causing murders and shooting.
He says oftentimes conflicts are unknown to the police. In several instances, by the time the police responds, it's too late. It's why he wants justices of the peace to step in.
As a group, once we keep an eye on those things, sometimes if they can be brought to our attention early, we can do an interruption and get involved in the process. So it's really important that we monitor and look at those things as well. As you know, we have the violence interruption centers, the domestic violence centers, rather. Very important that those those domestic violence centers that are at our police stations are used, that people refer to them.
The commissioner added that it is important that the domestic violence centers at police stations are put to use. He says so far these centers have proven to be effective.
I know I visited the one in Hayes in Carrington recently. They had 330 or so active cases dealing with, any one of which can escalate into serious crime and violence. So again, that's another police response to a problem, and it's not necessarily a police problem, but it can become a police problem, and so we have to jump ahead of it. If nobody else is doing it, then the JCF does it.
Shamela Pullen, TVJ News.
The instructing attorney for the 9 former murder accused in the Vindra Naipaul Coolman case in Trinidad and Tobago is speaking out after his legal team's request for a copy of the investigative report into the disappearance of the state's file was denied. Attorney Ganesh Sarup describes the series of events as concerning, and he tells TV6 he hopes the lead investigator gets to the bottom of who dropped the ball at the Attorney General's office. Details in this TV6 news item.
The request by the legal team for the former murder accused to be provided with a copy of the investigative report into the disappearance of the state's Vindra Naipaul Coolman file is yet to be granted, despite the claimants informing the lead investigator and the Attorney General that they would be willing to comply with the investigation if they could be guaranteed a copy. Instructing attorney for the claimants, Ganesh Sarup, tells TV6 he does not want the facts to be misrepresented. Is there any concern on the claimants' end that the information that you all could or would provide would somehow or could somehow be used to incriminate you all?
Absolutely not. There's no concern about that on our end. Everything was above board. I don't want the investigation to be a sham by them just simply saying, oh, well, the claimant's attorney didn't cooperate with us. That would be totally untrue.
Attorney Sarup further tells TV6 the series of events are concerning, as at no time did the state, as defendant, indicate that its file had gone missing.
I can say, as a matter of record, I haven't attended all of the court appearances in this matter, especially on the last day of the trial, that there was never a complaint by the claimant, by the defendant, to the court that there was any issues with the file on their end.
But he says even if that were the case, a copy could have been had from the court.
The same way the Attorney General dropped the hard copy of the file on the desk at the media conference, he got it within one day. And it's the same file that was available at all times from the court. That file was made available to the AG in less than 24 hours. So how could it be that there's a valid complaint about a file missing?
He maintains that his team is willing to comply with the investigation. But he says ultimately, the inquiry must identify who dropped the ball at the AG's office.
The state was fully aware that this matter was ongoing. There was no attempt to conceal the matter. There was full disclosure at all times. All documents were filed and served on the state. Court notices of court dates and court hearings were provided to the state. So I don't know what would have went wrong. Who dropped the ball? That is the question that one of the main questions that the investigators will have to address their mind to.
The attorney notes that the window of appeal has closed, and as such, the state cannot appeal the matter, which saw a judgment in excess of $20 million for the 9 former murder accused. Renessa Cutting, TV6 News.
Hubbard's is once again innovating the way you shop with its new online store, providing 24-hour shopping convenience. You can shop now for appliances, hardware, houseware, building material, and more. Free delivery island-wide. Start shopping now at hubbardshardware.gd. Safe, convenient, reliable.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.